You threw her out for being a mother.
This is a fancy restaurant, not a place for black babies to sleep. The words hit me like a slap in the face. Gasps froze in the air. Forks were just a few inches from mouths. Arielle Moore didn't say anything in the silence that followed. She didn't move. She just held her 3-year-old daughter tighter to her chest, where the child was still burning up with fever, and took a single step back. Karen Whitmore, the manager, stood tall behind the marble counter, her smile sharp, like a knife. She was a white woman in her 50s with a pristine shirt and a clipboard. She stared down on Arielle like she was something she had just scraped from her shoe. Karen responded, "You can take your things," her voice full of victory. "You're done here." Arielle blinked quickly and swallowed hard. She could feel the tears coming, but she wouldn't let them fall here, not in front of customers or coworkers, who never said anything when Karen murmured things about people like her or docked her hours the moment she wore her natural hair. Her daughter cried softly because she was too weary to cry. Arielle turned around, walked through the dining room with their head held high, like a broken shield. She walked by table 12, where the old couple often inquired for her by name. They turned their heads. She walked past table 5, where the frat lads seldom left a tip. They smiled. She walked by the corner booth, and for a moment their eyes met. She didn't know who he was. He looked like any other truck driver or traveling salesman, a middle-aged man in a basic flannel shirt holding a cup of black coffee. But his eyes didn't look away. He noticed her. He saw it all, and Arielle Moore didn't. Know that the man in the flannel wasn't just a drifter. He was Darius Langston, the billionaire who started Langston's Table and is now the CEO. She had just been sacked from the chain of high-end restaurants. He had come to this New Orleans branch in secret to find out why this site was losing money and staff like clockwork. What he found was her. A black waitress worked 2 shifts a day, managed 7 tables at once, and yet smiled through her tiredness. She still treated every customer like they cared, even when they didn't. And what did he see? That rainy Tuesday morning would alter everything. This isn't simply another story about how someone can change their life for the better. This is a true black story about systems designed to break individuals, focusing on the moment one woman decided to resist them. You are watching Hidden Worth, a show that shows stories of hidden power, dignity, and bravery. If you believe in second chances, hit that subscribe button and get ready for what comes next. Could bring back your faith in people. Arielle Moore lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the 7th Ward, just before Esplanade Avenue. The sidewalks were cracked, and the lamps flickered like stars that were about to die. Rent was $800 a month, which was funny because the bathroom had mold in it and the front door never completely shut. But that was home. At least it had been up until now. That night, she sat at the small kitchen table with a cool cloth on her forehead and her daughter Nova sleeping on the couch behind her. Arielle's phone buzzed to notify her that her power bill was due. It sounded like her fridge was praying not to break down. The eviction notice affixed to the inside of the kitchen cabinet looked like a countdown clock. 3 days. That's what the article said. You have 3 days to get the money or find a different place to stay. But it wasn't just about the rent. That was the part that no one got. Losing the job means more than just losing money. It meant losing the free meal that Ariel and Nova always shared throughout their shifts. It meant that she couldn't go to the employee clinic anymore, where she had been quietly asking about cheaper antibiotics for Nova's fevers that kept coming back. It meant no health insurance, no aid with childcare, and no refunds for bus passes. No safety net. There was nothing but sky below her. Life always charges black women double, her mother used to remark. Ariel didn't get it when she was 12, and her mother cried after getting fired from the motel laundry room for asking for overtime pay. But she got it now. Ariel had already learned how quickly the world might turn on you at the age of 24. She wasn't always a server. She was almost done with her degree in interior architecture from Tulane 2 years ago. She was good at designing spaces, not just making them look nice, but also making them work. She had done well on her studio critiques and worked as an intern at a small firm in the city. Her teachers said she was a quiet force with big city potential. Then Marcus came. He was older, charming, and steady. They, Nova, are the beginning, moved in together and talked about having a baby as if it were a future they were making. But when Nova was born, Marcus was gone. All that was left was a box of old books and an unpaid light bill. Ariel didn't have an opportunity to cry over it. She had just had a baby, didn't have a degree, and her hospital expenses were piling up. Like weeds. She took any job she could find. Such was the beginning. Such as working the night shift at a cafe, cleaning offices, or stocking shelves at a grocery store. She got it to work. Not much. And now, after doing everything right, showing up early, staying late, and never complaining, she'd been fired. Because her babysitter canceled at the last minute. She had no other choice but to wrap Nova in a blanket. But someone had seen it, and that person had made her look bad in front of everyone in the restaurant. Ariel wasn't mad at herself, though not really. People had said worse things to her. She had been through worse. The memory of Nova's little, feverish face peering out from the folds of her jacket. As they went through, the rain kept her up that night. That look, confused, terrified, and silent, really hurt her. Because Nova was too little to grasp what had just happened. But one day, she would. Her daughter would ask her why she got fired. And what would Ariel say? That she wasn't powerful enough? That the world didn't care? Or could she possibly, just by wanting to, come up with a different answer? That was the question that kept her up at night. And she didn't know it yet, but someone else had observed that walk in the rain. Someone who could change the course of her story. Because sometimes the toughest thing in life isn't losing everything. It's still having faith in yourself when no one else does. Darius Langston hadn't been in the back of a city bus in over 30 years, but that morning he was. Such as was. No driver, no automobile in town. It was just him, a baseball cap pulled low, a worn leather duffel bag by his feet, and the silent sound of rubber tires on broken New Orleans pavement. It was how he used to ride to work when he was 15, when people called him boy and didn't. Look him in the eye. He could see the city go by his window now. The old shotgun houses, the corner stores, and the man selling pralines from ice chests on the sidewalks. Not much had changed in New Orleans, but he did. He was now the founder and CEO of Langston's Table, a high-end restaurant chain with locations in 8 states that is well known across the country. Forbes named him a visionary in Southern cuisine, while the Wall Street Journal branded him the Black Bezos of the culinary world. But that morning, none of that was important, because one of his places, the one on North Clybourne Avenue, was falling apart from the inside. He could see it in the quarterly numbers. Sales were going down, turnover was going up, and people were starting to complain about cold service and unwelcoming staff. Nobody at the corporate office knew. Darius then made up his mind to look for them personally. That's why he came on a random Tuesday wearing Goodwill pants and a faded LSU hoodie, like any man who had seen better days. He got a black coffee, sat in the corner booth, and observed. At first, everything seemed normal. The home appeared tidy. He hadn't been there in 3 years, so the arrangement hadn't altered. The tables were ready. The music was quiet. The air smelled like fresh biscuits. But soon, the small things began to stand out. The white hostess barely noticed the black clients who came in behind a white couple. She sat the white people down first, even though they got there later. A Latina server who sought to switch shifts was told to go away with a wave. A young black busboy was yelled at in front of customers for dropping a fork. 5 minutes previously, the white bartender had dropped an entire glass tray and gotten a compassionate pat on the back. And then there was her, Ariel. He didn't know her name, but he could tell that she was flowing through the floor like a whirlwind of elegance and accuracy, keeping 5 tables in order without missing a beat. She smiled even when clients didn't pay attention to her, fixing things that she didn't know how to mend, saying sorry for things she didn't do. She made him think of his mother. When he was a youngster, Dorothy Langston worked as a housekeeper at the Crescent Arms Motel. Even though they hurt her toes, she wore her expensive shoes to work because how you walk tells people how to treat you. Darius had never forgotten that. He saw the same kind of battle when he watched Ariel. The kind that didn't ask for attention, it just did the job. But he also saw something else, how her eyes kept darting to the break room, the stress in her shoulders when her boss strolled by. She looked at her phone 3 times in 10 minutes. And then there was the blast. The boss, the child, the firing in public. At that moment, he should have stood up. He should have asserted, "I am the rightful owner, and this stops now." But he didn't. Not because he was terrified, boner, but because he needed to comprehend. He needed to know how serious this issue was. He needed to understand how long this issue had been hiding beneath the surface of his brand, in his name. Because Darius Langston knew something other CEOs didn't. Systems don't degrade overnight. They progressively fall apart via minor acts of brutality, silence, and ignoring them. This wasn't just about Ariel, though. It was about every black woman who was passed over, every mother who was told to figure it out, and every worker who was good enough to serve, but never good enough to lead. That morning, Darius made a choice. He wouldn't merely mend what he saw. He would take it personally. Because when he was 15, a restaurant manager said he stole a piece of pie that he hadn't touched. They got in touch with the police. All night long, his mother cried. That was the last time he went to that diner. Years later, he bought it and turned it into the first Langston's table. And now, in the same emotional maelstrom, he witnessed the same thing happen again, but this time it was to her, not him, and he swore it would end differently. That night, Darius didn't sleep. He sat on the old couch of his short-term rental with his laptop open and a cup of black coffee getting cold next to him. He wrote down his notes for the day on a yellow legal pad. Every line told a bigger tale, and it wasn't a good one. Langston's table was designed to be unique. That was the whole objective. Darius promised from the start that his restaurants wouldn't be like the ugly side of the industry, where black workers were stuck in back-of-house roles, women were passed over for management, and diversity was just in brochures. He developed rules around fairness, around pay transparency, around transparency, and around training talent from within. He had been proud of that. But what did he see at the North Claiborne site? Was rot. It's as easy as that. And rot doesn't start at the top. It grows from the top down. Karen Whitmore had been with the organization for 4 years and was the general manager of the facility. She was good on paper. She was in charge of everything. Her sales were good. She always turned in her quarterly reports early, and she kept her labor costs low. Darius, on the other hand, understood better than to trust immaculate documentation. He began to dig then, and what he found made him sick. The scheduling logs arrived first. Ariel worked more than any other waitress, averaging 6 double shifts a week, and often closing 2 nights in a row before opening early the next day. But her hours were recorded as part-time, which was barely below the level needed to get benefits. Then the shift changes happened. In the recent month, Karen turned down at least 4 of Ariel's formal requests to change shifts. All of these requests were approved when made by white servers, often with less notice. There was also a worrying pattern. The Black and Latino personnel always had longer shifts, fewer breaks, and were allocated to the back dining room, which had slower traffic and smaller tips. But the employee leave interviews were the worst. Darius asked HR for all of the files. From the last 18 months, in less than a year, 17 people had quit or been fired from that job. 14 of them were people of color, and almost all of them said hostile management or unfair treatment in their leave paperwork. But none of those allegations has ever led to an investigation. Why? Because Karen was known as a results-driven manager, and regional leadership didn't want to rock the boat. Somehow, at some point, the system had begun to promote doing things quickly, above doing things right. And that wasn't the end of it. An anonymous email from a personal Gmail account that was marked low priority talked of hiding cameras in the break room, watching staff on their breaks, and threatening them verbally. Darius quickly called for a private audit of the place. Within 48 hours, a small group of people from corporate compliance, people Darius knew and trusted, confirmed what he was afraid of. There were hidden cameras in staff areas that weren't open to the... Under the pretense of safety, Karen utilized them to keep an eye on break times, keep track of talks, and scare personnel. That went too far. It wasn't just wrong, it was against the law. Darius still hadn't pulled the trigger. He had to. Be smart. Karen was a sign of a bigger problem that was going on. If she were fired in front of everyone without warning, it would set off defensive mechanisms, change the story, and intimidate other managers into quiet instead of making them think. So he picked something else. He would bring Ariel back, but not as a waiter. He wanted her to be on the inside so she could see, hear, and feel the system from both sides. Langston's table had to start from the ground up if it was going to change. From the voices that have been trodden on for too long. Darius looked into Ariel's employee file. She had a 3.8 GPA at Tulane. She still had her professor's recommendations in her email. There had never been any doubt about her ability to lead. It had just been disregarded. He slowly closed the laptop. There were 2 bouts coming up now. The first step was cleaning up the house, holding individuals accountable and changing the culture. Second was harder, restoring trust with people like Ariel and the scores of workers who had departed, thinking that no one would ever fight for them. Darius had made a fortune by being friendly to people from the South. Now he had... It wasn't merely a brand. It was a vow. Ariel Moore got up before the sun. She always did. It wasn't something they did every day. It was about staying alive. Sleeping in was a luxury for you as a single black mother raising a sick child in a city that never forgave the poor. And Ariel couldn't afford to live in luxury. Nova was cuddled up next to her on the pull-out couch, and her small chest slowly rose and fell. The fever had gone down overnight thanks to a neighbor who gave her the last of her baby's amoxicillin. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about their position was, but it was something. Ariel walked quietly into the kitchen. It sounded like the coffee maker was dying. She put the last of the generic store-brand coffee grounds in and turned it on. The smell was weak and harsh, like hope when things are horrible. There was a stack of employment applications on the counter. Some of them were already creased from being folded up and put in her purse, given to front desk supervisors, or posted through broken web portals. All of them have the same little sentence on them. "We'll be in touch." But no. One called back. Some people said the story had already gone viral. A waitress was let go while holding her ill toddler. Some customers took video of it. A few blogs in the area wrote about it. "Young mother humiliated at Langston's table. Where's the compassion?" was one headline. Ariel didn't want to be famous. She needed to get paid, so she worked hard. She got a temporary job cleaning Airbnb flats in the Garden District. She gave out samples at a huge food store on the West Bank. She also took a late-night data entry job for a temp agency that paid her the minimum wage and had her pay for using their old laptops. It felt like she was lifting a boulder up a hill with one hand and cradling her kid with the other every shift. But Ariel never said anything, because Nova needed her help. Dignity didn't pay the bills, rent, but it did keep her going. She read library books about business strategy at night, not because she had time, but because she recalled who she used to be, the girl who wanted to build. Boutique hotels, knew what load-bearing walls were, and could read blueprints like poetry. That girl was still there. She was basically buried under a lot of problems. What about Ariel? Every day she was digging her out. There were times when she broke down, but not in public. She did it in the bathroom with the water running, on buses that smelled like engine oil, and in the middle of the grocery store when she realized she couldn't afford both milk and diapers. But every time she got back up. She didn't like the tears, but she was proud that they never stopped her. Then there was a knock. It was Thursday afternoon, just around noon. She imagined it was the assistant of another landlord coming to give her the last warning. But when she opened the door, it wasn't a debt collector or a sheriff. It was him, Langston Darius. At first, she didn't. Not without the flannel shirt and silent disguise, and not out of context. But the eyes were still the same. The voice was the same too. He whispered softly, "I saw what happened, and I think it was wrong." Ariel didn't know what to say. Right away, she put up her walls. There had been too many guys who had come to her with promises. They didn't mean to keep, Darius said, as if he could read her mind. "I'm not here to feel sorry for you. I'm here to give you something I think you've already earned." A job? She thought. A publicity stunt of some kind? But what he presented wasn't a gift. It was a chance, a 2-week training placement. As an assistant to a regional operations lead. Full pay. Childcare is paid for. No promise of a long-term job, but a true chance to discover how the firm worked. From the inside, a real place at the table. Ariel didn't respond straight away. She didn't believe in free stuff. Not after all the work she put in. But this didn't seem like a freebie. It felt like someone had actually seen her and wasn't going to show her mercy. He was showing respect. So she went for it. She agreed to play the part. She believed in transparency and in something deep within that had helped her get through every difficult day, every missed meal, and every insult spoken behind her back. You may bend a woman like her, but you can never break her. The next morning, Ariel appeared in front of the Langston's Table corporate office wearing the only blazer she owned. It was a navy blue one she had bought at a thrift store 3 years ago when she still thought she would finish her degree. She glanced at the glass doors and felt the weight of all the doubts she had ever had about being late, very exhausted, too broken. She was about to turn around, but she didn't. Darius Langston was waiting. Inside, not in a private boardroom or behind a marble desk, but in an office on the second floor with warm wood furniture and images of his mother on the wall. The area felt like it had been used. Truthful. He stood up when she walked in and shook her hand with the same respect he would offer a partner, not a former server. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I almost didn't," said. He nodded and said, "I know. That's why it means more that you did." They sat across from each other and believed in each other. They were two people from the same world who had been successful but were bonded by survival. Darius remarked, "I've looked over your file," and tapped a folder in front of him. "Your schooling, your work history, your performance reviews. You were one of our best employees. You may have been a good leader, but no one ever suggested that you go up." Ariel didn't say anything. She had given up on fairness a long time ago. He went on to say, "What happened to you last week was a failure of this company. Not simply one manager's cruel behavior, but a system that let it happen. And I can't change it, but I want to give you more than just an apology." He pushed a piece of paper across the table. "This is a temporary offer for a trial job. You would follow our regional operations coordinator around for 2 weeks. Get to know how we run our restaurants behind the scenes. If you do well, we'll talk about putting you in line for a managerial position. If not, it's no big deal. You get a check and experience when you leave." Ariel looked at the paper. She made more than twice as much money as she did tending tables, covered by transit, but she still wasn't sure. "Why me?" she repeated, questioning her worth each time. "Why now?" she finally asked. "There are people who are more qualified, more polished, and more connected. You could have chosen anyone." Darius leaned in and spoke softly. He answered, "Because I saw what you did with nothing. I saw how you treated every customer like they were important, even when they didn't treat you the same way. I observed how you handled the chaos without saying anything. I noticed your potential when no one else did." Ariel's throat got tight. People didn't see her often. Not like that. Not because of her strength. Not for what she's worth. Darius went on, "And if I want to repair what's wrong with this company, I need individuals who know what it's like to work there. People who know what it's like to struggle. People who don't lead from behind a desk, bush desk, but from their lives." He stopped for a moment. I don't want to hire someone just to fill a spot. I want a leader. Ariel looked down at the offer. Her fingers shook a little. It wasn't just work. It was a test. Could she get up? Could she be in charge? Could she take all the anguish she had been carrying and all the years of being ignored and turn them into something that made room for other people? She thought of Nova, about making a future where her daughter didn't have to beg for a place to sit. Then she raised her head. "I'll do it," she responded in a gentle voice. "But not because I need help. I wouldn't offer it if you did." Darius said. Ariel went to the training center that afternoon, talked to HR. She signed her first benefits package. That night, she finally got a full night's sleep after weeks of not getting one. And the next day, she got there early with a notebook in hand, hair pulled back, eyes on the prize. She wasn't going to just take it if this was her chance. She was going to take it. Ariel had already noticed something strange by the conclusion of her first week of training. She was learning how to use more than simply spreadsheets and scheduling software. It wasn't even the small amount of stress she still felt as she walked through the same doors where she had been embarrassed. It was a file, a folder that was closed and quiet in the corner of the regional manager's desk, just called N. Claiborne, Internal Review, the name of where she used to live. Ariel saw that the folder either disappeared or was put in a locked cabinet whenever someone from upper management came into the room, even though no one said anything about it. She didn't ask any questions, but she was still showing what she could do. Paying attention, looking, getting to know the system from the inside. And what did she see? Worried her. Karen Whitmore, the manager who dismissed her in front of a lot of people in the dining room, was still there. Still in charge of the same restaurant. Still reporting perfect numbers and smiling at every Zoom meeting like nothing had happened. Darius hadn't let her go. Not yet. And that hurt. Ariel didn't know why until she thought about it. Monica, the regional coordinator, left. Ariel alone in the training office on Friday afternoon after a long meeting about shop audits. That folder, the folder, was out again. And this time, the tab wasn't closed. Ariel was unsure. Then she opened it. What she found inside made her stomach turn. Photocopies of expense. Reimbursements that Karen signed but didn't add up. Langston's table didn't even use invoices from catering companies. Large orders for high-quality wine and event rentals that weren't listed in the budget logs. Some of the payments had been, what about the names? All connected to one outside company called Gulf South Supplies. Ariel took out her phone and did, what about the names? All connected to one outside company called Gulf South Supplies. Ariel took out her phone and did a short search in public. The business wasn't even real. It was a shell with a phone number that didn't work. And a website that didn't work. It was registered to an address in Baton Rouge. And the owner on the list? Karen's brother. Ariel sat back, her heart racing. This wasn't just poor management. This was a scam. She gently put everything back in the folder and went out into the hall. Monica was coming back with a cup of coffee. Ariel murmured softly, "Monica, we need to talk," Darius called her that night. "You found it, didn't you?" "Hinyu?" he asked. Ariel said, "You already knew," in shock. "I had a hunch, but now I have more than just a hunch. I have someone I trust on the inside. Why haven't you let her, you, go?" Riel questioned, her throat burning with the inquiry. Darius added, Karen isn't just a bad manager. She's a sign of something bigger. If I take her down without fixing the system that kept her safe, this will happen again in 6 months. In a different city, maybe. Maybe to someone else like you. So what now? We let the truth come out, he remarked. And I need your help to do it. That weekend, Darius secretly collected statements from former workers. A lot of them had been too scared to speak up earlier. They finally talked to each other with Ariel as the go-between. Stories of being targeted because of race, not getting promotions, and having shifts cut without warning. One cook said that if he asked for extra hours, he would get calls from immigration. Another person reported they had been written up for wearing a headscarf, even though corporate policy allowed it. Karen had been the queen of that place. But the barriers were getting closer. Darius made his move on Monday morning at the quarterly video conference with all the Langston's table managers throughout the Southeast. Ariel was asked to sit down. Karen grinned on the screen, and the camera was set up to show off her clean eatery. She answered, "The numbers are stable. Customers are happier. We've changed how we do things to cut down on staff." Latency. Darius let her talk. Then he showed his screen to everyone. There were spending reports on display, witnesses, records of vendors, logs of employees. Karen's face went blank. Darius's voice was calm when he talked. "It's cold," he said. "This isn't just about numbers. This is a matter of ethics. It's about trust, about the type of leaders we want to be." He stopped and looked right into the camera. "I started this business to give people dignity through work. You grabbed that and turned it into terror." He spoke to the HR director on the phone. "Karen Whitmore is fired right away. The law will get in touch with you about restitution. Go? Now you can't use company systems anymore." Then he went on to the rest of the call. "This company will no longer put performance ahead of safety. If you run your team with fear, manipulation, or bias, your time is running out." Ariel didn't say anything, but she didn't have to. Justice, real justice, didn't always scream. At times, it came in gently and turned on the lights. Ariel thought that getting fired in front of a full dining room was the most embarrassing thing that had ever happened to her. She was wrong. It turns out that walking into a room full of experienced business people while still being that girl who went viral was its own kind of fire. The second week of her trial training was very different from the first. No more warm welcome sessions. No more warm greetings. This was the actual thing. Reports about the budget. Seminars on labor law. Modules for lowering conflict. Audits of technology. Reviews of vendor contracts. And what about Ariel? Was going down. Every day began at 7 a.m., sharp, and didn't stop until around 7 at night. 12 hours of sessions, performance reviews, and case studies in a row. You could choose to take a break for lunch. When they said optional, they meant business people meant don't take one if you want to keep up. She had only gotten 4 hours of sleep each night by Wednesday. The company paid for Nova to remain with a sitter overnight, but Ariel felt the pain of missing her in her bones. Her eyes hurt all the time. Her temples throbbed. She felt more unsure of herself than ever. She would sit in meetings and listen to her coworkers throw around acronyms like PNL, ROI, and EBITDA. These were all words she had learned in business school, but they seemed like a foreign language to her now. that she had been out of that environment for years. And what's worse, some people wanted her to fail. They didn't say it. Not directly, but Ariel could see it in the looks, the courteous but frigid looks. The way they called her Miss Mormont, or Moore, felt more like a wall than respect. I guess a sob story really will take you places now. She didn't hear that comment, but she still heard it, and it started a fire. Ariel began to stay. Late. Reading. Learning. She asked questions that other people were too proud to ask. She emailed Monica after work to ask about the budgeting formulas. She watched videos on how to negotiate with vendors till after midnight. And slowly, painfully, she grew better. She learned how to... I didn't have to be just a server before. She learned how to fight back with facts instead of fear. She learned that being a leader didn't mean knowing everything. It meant asking better questions. But mistakes still happened. She read a labor compliance rule wrong and approved a schedule that broke the rules for miners' breaks. I fixed it, took the heat. Another one was cleared. On another occasion, she failed to mark the date on a supplier's contract renewal. It started a 90-day automatic renewal with a price rise hidden in the fine print. She didn't try. She just wrote down what she needed to, rectified what she could, and continued going. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't elegant, but that was growth. Darius saw everything from a distance. Never went in. Don't give praise too soon, but he still put her name on the daily reports. Kept inquiring how she was doing. The door was open for whatever happened next. By the end of the second week, Ariel had made it through 3 role-playing situations where she had to resolve staff disagreement, 1 fake inspection audit, and the room was quiet after she concluded that last presentation. Her heart was beating, her palms were sweating, and her breath was shaky. Then Monica shook her head. "Good job," she remarked. Simply. It wasn't a round of applause, but it was enough. Ariel didn't call a transport that night. Instead, she walked home from the bus station. It was warm outside. The cicadas buzzed. Her heels hurt, her chest hurt, but for the first time in a long time, she felt tall. She hadn't gotten anything. She had worked hard for it. 1 error at a time. 1 change at a time. 1 long, tiring, back-breaking day at a time. And she was still there. She was still in the battle. Some people are born with power. What about others? They have to make it through the fire. What about Ariel? She was figuring out how to get through it, not burning. They handed her the mic. The last thing they did wrong. The last session of the quarterly Southeast Leadership Summit happened on Thursday afternoon. It was a virtual conference where every manager, assistant manager, and regional lead from Langston's table's 83 locations logged in to hear reports, share strategies, and celebrate how well they had done. Darius Langston made it clear at the start of the summit that this quarter is not about growth. It's about being responsible. He stood next to Ariel in front of a live camera that was broadcasting to more than 300 employees at the end of the meeting. Before we finish, I'd like to introduce someone you may have heard of, Ariel Moore. A flash of movement across the displays. Eyebrows went up. By now, everyone knew about her. Some people thought of her as a sign of strength. What about other people? An issue. On another? An issue. A problem. A spotlight they hadn't asked for. But none of that mattered. because Ariel had something they didn't have: the truth. She walked up, wearing a tight gray blazer and her hair put back into a low bun. She didn't have any jewelry on, save for the modest gold necklace her mother gave her. Her voice didn't shake. "Ariel Moore is my name. 2 months ago, I lost my job at the North Claiborne store." A lot of you watched the video. A few of you said something. Some of you undoubtedly thought, "Oh, come on." There was a lot of silence on the call. I'm not here to talk about what occurred again. I'm here to talk about what happened and why, and what's still going on. She clicked on the first slide on the shared screen. It was a heat map that showed how many employees left each Langston's table throughout the Southeast. 5 places were responsible for 64% of our frontline resignations in the last year. All 5 had something in common: high rates of complaints, low rates of internal promotions for minority workers, and more than 1 case of HR suppression. She clicked again. Second slide. There is a spreadsheet of complaint logs, many of which are marked unsubstantiated. They are all connected to Karen Whitmore and 2 other managers who still work at various branches. This isn't just about one awful actor. It's about how being quiet helped her do well. Third slide. Video stills. From the break room security footage illegally acquired at North Claiborne came an issue. This included images showing the camera locations, time-stamped footage, and clips of employees changing clothes, taking breaks, crying, and concluding their shifts. Everyone on the call gasped at the same time. This video was taken without permission, used to scare staff. Breaks should be punished. Stop talking. And a manager who got performance bonuses while her staff was getting crushed gave the go-ahead. Ariel stepped back from the slide, breaks, and slides, and let the weight of the pictures linger in the air. You can't change a culture by writing a check and hoping people forget. You correct it by showing what doesn't work, by facing the painful facts head on, and by making the choice to do better even if it makes you feel... Her voice cracked a little, but it didn't shatter. I was lucky. I was given a second opportunity. I don't like it, but most people do. Darius got the mic back, but no one was paying attention to him. Everyone was watching her, because something had changed. This was no longer a scandal. This was a time of judgment. Later that night, regional managers told the corporation that dozens of employees from all around the country had sent in anonymous testimonials, tales of revenge, bullying, racism that was hidden behind closed doors and in just jokes. Some were only 3 years old. Some things happened last week, but what now? There were people talking because someone had gotten up. They had also seen her. Ariel didn't want people to clap. She didn't want a plaque or a slap on the back. She only wanted the truth, fairness, and for the first time in years, she thought it might be feasible. After the summit, Darius saw her sitting outside the office. He sat next to her and gazed up at the sky as if it had the answers. He sat next to her and said, "You did well. I wasn't sure they would listen." "They didn't have a choice," he said with a smile. "You didn't give them one," she chuckled quietly. "I still feel like I'm waiting for someone to pull the rug out from under me. This can't be real." He nodded slowly. "That sensation never really goes away, but you still learn to stand." He then gave her a folder. There was a new contract inside, not for practice, not for a trial period, but only for a permanent leadership job. Director of Equity and Employee Culture for the Southeast region. She was shocked. Looked up at him. "You deserve this," he said. "Now help me make sure that no one else has to go through what you did." Ariel slowly closed the folder, and for the first time, she let herself believe she wasn't just getting by anymore. She was making something. It was a Monday morning, warm and clear, with a breeze that made even the skyline of downtown Atlanta appear calm. Ariel stood in front of the Langston HQ and saw her own reflection in the large glass doors. She was no longer in uniform. She hadn't worn one in a long time. No apron. No tag with a name on it. No smell of fryer oil left on her fingers. She wore a navy blue pantsuit that fit her well. Her natural curls were securely coiled back, and her lips were a calm burgundy color. Her eyes were sharp but soft. She fit in here. Not because someone let her in, but because she worked hard for every inch of land she stood on. The whole Southeast leadership team was in the executive boardroom. Some she knew well, while others she just knew by name. Darius was near the front, next to a chair that was empty. The conference started with the usual indicators, such as statistics on growth, new training processes, and ways to keep employees. But Ariel felt like every word she heard was a drum roll in her chest, because she was aware of what was going to happen. Kind of. Finally, Darius turned to the chamber. "Before we end, I want to tell you about a change in leadership." He looked around, and the silence made people want to know more. For the past 3 months, we've been looking at the cultural gaps in our southern branches. We looked at grievances, talked to staff, and saw someone rise not by asking, but by doing. Darius turned to Ariel. Her heart thudded once, forcefully. Ariel Moore will be the Southeast's Regional Director of Culture and Employee Experience starting right away. Not a sound, not a clap, just hold your breath. Then, one by one, the people in the room stood up. Not because it's a custom, not because I have to, because I respect you. She hadn't asked for the job. She hadn't sent in a resume or gone through an interview with a committee. But here she was, not as a symbol or a fix-it figure, but because she had become the answer. A senior manager from Savannah stretched out to shake her hand as she stepped forward. "You didn't just make it through the storm," he continued. "You made us fix the roof." She laughed, not because she was being polite, but because the weight was finally lifting. Ariel picked up the mic, looked across the crowd, and cleared her throat. "I don't want to give a speech. I want to make a vow." Again, there was silence, but it was a quiet time, filled with hopeful gazes. "I'm not here to be a puppet. I'm here to hear, to make systems that care about individuals, especially those who don't get heard often. The ones who scrub floors, clear plates, and sprint between tables with sore feet and dreams that can't be seen." She stopped for a while to let it sink in. "I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, but I know what it's like to be told you're not important. I know what it's like to cry in a supply closet and hope that your shift ends before you lose your dignity. And I know how it feels to get a second opportunity." She looked at Darius and then back at Leon. The room. "I'm going to use this title to give other individuals their first chance. That's the work. That's the goal." Her hands shook a little when she sat down, but her eyes didn't. It wasn't the title that changed her. What it meant was what it was. Confirmation. Trust. giving people power. That afternoon, she went back to her new office. It wasn't big or fancy, but it did have a window, a genuine desk, and a door with her name on it. Ariel Moore is the regional director. She stood in the middle for a time and just breathed. She then sat down, opened her laptop, and brought up the project idea she had been working on in secret. Project Elevate, ways for undervalued employees to get promoted. It was time to look for more Aryans, more Jamals, more voices that had been quieted. The work wasn't finished. It was just getting started. But this time, she wasn't starting from the bottom. She was working from the middle. This time, she didn't have to ask for a place at the table. Now she was at the table. Ariel got the email on a Thursday morning like any other. The topic line was simple. Request for verification, follow-up on background check. At first, she didn't think much of it. Standard HR compliance, or maybe something that came up in an audit. She opened it while drinking her coffee, not expecting the chill that would go down her spine a second later. The statement was short and came with a PDF from an outside company that Langston's Table had hired to do historical HR reviews. There was one line that stood out. We found a difference between Ms. Ariel Chantel Moore's employment and criminal records from September 2011. Her stomach fell. She hadn't heard that name properly pronounced in years. Not since before she cut the Chantel, dropped out of Georgia State, and disappeared from her old life like a ghost in borrowed clothing. Ariel carefully shut her laptop. Her hands were cold. She had been afraid of this moment for years. Not because she was ashamed of anything, but because the truth was hard to understand. And in the business world, difficult stories didn't get much grace. She opened the file again. There were court records from the Fulton County Juvenile Court. The crime was theft, which is a misdemeanor, 17 years old. She remembered it all too well, standing in that supermarket shop with bright lights, holding a bunch of diapers and baby formula. Kyra, her younger sister, was just a newborn at the time and had run out of milk. It had been 3 days since their mother had come home. Ariel didn't have any money, ID, or aid. She hadn't taken the food to eat. She had snatched it to save Kyra's life. The management had contacted the police. The police report said she was hostile, but all she could remember was crying. So hard she couldn't breathe. The officer was nice enough not to put her in handcuffs. The judge had given her community service and a diversion program as punishment. She secretly finished both while working evenings at a local diner under the table. It was meant to be closed. It was sealed until an overzealous audit contractor found the initial incident in a police log that had been misfiled and digitized before it was sealed. It was legal in a technical sense. From an ethical point of view, it was hard to tell, but now it was here, in the system, and the board would see it in less than 48 hours. Someone had to tell Darius that before. That night, she knocked on the door to his office. He was going over plans for expansion and looked tired but alert. "What's going on?" he asked, pointing her in. "I have to tell you something, and you need to know the complete story before you do anything." She told him everything, from the night she got caught, stealing diapers, to the juvenile court hearing, to the years she had to hide her background on every job application. Because "have you ever been arrested" didn't leave room for nuance. She told him about Kyra, who was now a full-time student at Spelman College with straight A's. She told him about the jobs she'd done under fake names, the dread she'd felt, and the humiliation that never completely went away. The room was quiet when she was done. Darius slumped back, and it was hard to tell what he was thinking. Ariel remarked in a quiet voice, I didn't want to lie. But I knew no one would ask me why I did what I did. They would merely look at the record and make an assumption. You were 17, Darius finally remarked, his voice steady. Trying to save a baby. That's not stealing. That's how to stay alive. Ariel's eyes were full of tears that she didn't let fall. But the board, you will hear it from me directly, he said, cutting in. This isn't a scandal. This is exactly why you should be in charge of changing the culture. You know how much it costs to not be heard. You realize that the system doesn't always keep the proper people safe. He stopped. But I won't lie to you. Someone will. Someone will tell the wrong people. So we get ahead of it. What? We tell the story ourselves. Langston's Table started an internal video series the next week. Showed what life was like for its leaders. The first episode? Ariel's tale. Not filtered. Truthful. Uncooked. No PR shine. Just her, sitting in front of a basic background and telling the truth. I stole because I had to, but I didn't let it be the end of my narrative. The response was quick. Some people cried. A few people clapped. Some HR managers sent emails saying they had things in their past that they were too scared to write down. She wasn't broken by the past. It made her who she is. And that secret, that guilt she had, kept hidden for more than 10 years, became the flame she would carry into every meeting, every policy change, and every employee situation she would deal with from then on. Not to show that she was good enough, but to show that everyone should get another chance. It had been 9 months since Ariel's story had shocked, moved, and inspired everyone at Langston's Table. It's been 9 months since she appeared in front of a camera and told the world that her past was not a stain, but a seed. 9 months can bring about a lot of change. And for Ariel Moore, everything had changed. She stepped through the spinning glass doors of Langston Global's Atlanta offices on a clear, beautiful morning in mid-October. Langston Global, not Langston's Table. She had been promoted again, this time to Vice President of People and Culture for the whole parent business. 12 different restaurant names, more than 1,400 workers, and one goal: change the company from the inside out. As she walked by the front desk, her heels made a sharp noise on the marble floor. Patrice, the receptionist, who was a young black woman, stood up and smiled. "Hello, Vice President Moore." Ariel smiled warmly. "Good morning, Patrice. How is your mom doing now that she has had surgery?" "She is getting well quickly." Said to, "Thank you for the card." Ariel responded, "That's what family is for." And she meant it, because that's what she had made. A business that felt like home. She still remembered how sad she had been when she got fired for hiding her baby in the break room. Now she had a full-time nanny, a hybrid schedule that let her work from home twice a week, and a company-wide parental policy that gave everyone, not just salaried employees, flexible hours, emergency childcare grants, and 3 months of paid leave. That wasn't just a win for her, that was a win for every working mother in the organization. And that was just the start. Her office looked out over Piedmont Park. It was big, open, and full of light, books, and art by local black artists. There were pictures on the shelves of Ariel and her daughter at the business picnic. Ariel shaking hands with the Mayor at a community cooperation event, and Ariel standing next to Darius Langston at the introduction of the company's new DEI project. She was trying to keep her job 9 months ago. Now she was rewriting all of the job descriptions. She walked into the executive roundtable, a meeting of all the senior leaders that happens every 3 months at 10 a.m. on the dot. She didn't think twice, didn't shrink or look around the room for signals of condemnation. She sat down at the table like she belonged there, and she did. Darius was already there. He smiled and shook his head. They got going. The agenda was full with things like performance indicators, deadlines for expansion, and legal updates. Ariel, on the other hand, had her own slide. She stood up when it was her time. Since we started our programs for hiring and supporting everyone, she said in a calm, clear voice, we've cut turnover by 27% across the board. We still have 94% of the employees that use the Emergency Family Fund. And we've hired 61% more internal candidates from underrepresented backgrounds than we did last year. She clicked on the next slide. And most significantly, she said, we've gained back trust with our employees, with our clients, with ourselves. There was silence after that. Then there was applause. The CFO leaned in. How do you plan to grow this year? Ariel added, I want to work with community colleges and programs that help people get back into school. We give people with non-traditional paths who have been shut out of the job market and who have had past mistakes used against them a way in. Ariel picked her up in one smooth motion. What did you say your mom does? Mommy is the boss of all to being vice president, from hopeless to certain, from being ignored to being unstoppable. The world hadn't given her power. She had created it. Walls, leather chairs, and corner offices with titles. She sat on the side of the bed and let herself feel what first started at Langston's table. I didn't know how much I was worth, she said, her voice gentle but steady. Fatigued, ignored, or even dejected, let her story be a reminder. You are not the names that other people gave you. You have with your money. You are not the trauma you had or the silence you were told to preserve. You are anyone's permission to get up. This isn't just a story about second chances. It's a plan, a reminder that every move you take